Idea 1, opening. The whisper in the silent night. There are days when the heart can no longer hide what it carries. A day that looks ordinary to everyone else, yet inside. It feels like a quiet storm refusing to end. You move through the hours, through tasks, through polite smiles, but when the door finally closes behind you, your truth slips out with your breath. You are tired. Tired in a way that goes deeper than words can hold. Night falls quickly. The room is dim and still. So still that you can hear your own heartbeat echo with a heaviness you don't know how to shake off. You sit at the edge of your bed, fingers laced together as if trying to hold on to something. Anything. No one sees. No one hears except God and a heart that has carried more than it was meant to carry. In that moment, you don't ask for miracles. You don't ask for signs. A small whisper escapes your lips, fragile but honest, trembling but true. Lord, I don't have the strength to carry this pain alone anymore. It isn't a polished prayer. It isn't a carefully shaped sentence. It's simply the truth, a truth you've pushed behind smiles, behind resilience, behind every time you told yourself, I'm fine. But tonight, you are done pretending to be strong. In the dark, the emptiness inside becomes clearer. Old wounds, broken trust, shattered hopes, everything rises at once like waves that no longer care how exhausted you are. You realize how long you've been running, how long you've been trying to hold yourself together, and how easy it is to forget that even a heart has limits. And then, in the middle of all that heaviness, something unexpected happens. A quiet presence, not outside, but deep within. It feels like someone is sitting beside you, not interrupting your pain, not demanding that you stop hurting, just being there. You know who it is. It is God. Not the God of thunder and burning bushes, not the God of loud declarations, but the God of gentleness, the one who comes closest when you are at your weakest. And in that moment, you begin to understand this night is not just another night. This is the beginning of something sacred, a real conversation between your wounded heart and the one who knows it better than you do. A small doorway opening where you finally admit you cannot heal yourself by sheer willpower. You need Him. And from that small, trembling whisper, the healing begins. Idea 2, the origin of the pain. Pain never appears out of nowhere. It gathers slowly, often quietly, from moments we thought we had survived, from memories we believed we had buried, and from people we trusted more than we should have. As the character sits in the dim glow of the night, they begin to recognize that the ache inside them has roots, deep roots, reaching far back into places they avoided for too long. Some of the pain comes from a relationship that fell apart, not suddenly, but gradually, like a beautiful house collapsing beam by beam. There were once days filled with laughter, promises, hope, and a sense of belonging. But little by little, words turned sharp, silence grew heavy, and the warmth that once felt like home became a cold distance. The person they loved drifted away, leaving behind questions with no answers and wounds that refused to close. Then there's the pain of betrayal, the kind that feels like a quiet knife. It doesn't always come from enemies, most times. It comes from the people we trusted the most. A friend who abandoned them in their weakest moment. A family member who misunderstood their heart. Someone who used their vulnerability as an advantage, not a gift. Betrayal leaves a different kind of scar, not visible, but felt every time the heart tries to trust again. And beneath all of it lies the disappointment of dreams that never came true, plans that fell apart, doors that closed without warning, opportunities lost not because they were unworthy, but because life seemed to take a turn they never prepared for. It's the kind of disappointment that whispers, maybe you're not good enough, maybe nothing will change. Slowly, all of these fragments, heartbreak, betrayal, disappointment, gather into a quiet heaviness. A heaviness the character tried to carry alone. They told themselves to be strong, to keep going, to push the pain down until it went silent. But pain does not disappear when ignored. It settles deeper, waits longer, and grows heavier. As they sit in the stillness, they realize something. The true wound is not just what happened, but what it made them believe about themselves. That they were unworthy of love, that they were easily replaced, that their voice didn't matter, that their heart was somehow too much or not enough. These are the lies that quietly shaped their days. influencing how they walked, how they spoke, how they perceived themselves in the mirror. Their heart isn't just hurting, it's carrying false stories written by past experiences. And now, in the presence of God, they finally see the truth beneath the pain. They are not broken because they failed. They are hurting because they trusted, because they cared, because they loved deeply, and love, when wounded, bleeds. This realization becomes the first step of healing. Not running from the pain, but understanding where it came from and offering it piece by piece back into God's hands. Idea 3, the moment of collapse, when the heart can no longer pretend. There comes a point in every wounded heart's journey when the weight becomes too much to carry. It doesn't happen suddenly. It's not one moment, one event, or one conversation. It's an accumulation, a quiet buildup of sorrow, disappointment, exhaustion, and unanswered questions. And then, without warning, the soul reaches its breaking point. For a long time, the character tried to be strong. They told themselves to keep moving, to stay productive, to smile for others, to pretend that everything was fine. They believed that resilience meant silence, that if they could endure without falling apart, they would somehow prove their worth, their maturity, their ability to handle life. But there is a limit to even the bravest heart. One evening, after holding everything together for far too long, they feel something inside them finally give way. It is not dramatic, not loud, not violent. It is a quiet collapse, the kind that happens when the last fragile thread snaps, a slight tremble in their chest, a breath that catches for no reason, a tear slipping down without permission. They realize, almost with shame, that they can't keep pretending anymore. They sit down, knees weak. Feeling the truth rise inside them like a tide they can no longer resist. I can't do this by myself. It's a confession that terrifies them. For so long, they believed that admitting weakness meant defeat. They believed that asking for help meant they were failing. But now, sitting in the dim stillness of their room, they finally understand something profound. Breaking down is not failure, it is honesty. In this moment of collapse, memories they tried to bury begin resurfacing, arguments they replayed 1,000 times. Words that cut deeper than they ever admitted. The loneliness that wrapped around them even when they were surrounded by people. The silent battles they fought every night. Hiding the pain behind a mask every morning. They begin to see how exhaustion has woven itself into every part of their life. Waking up feels heavy. Speaking feels forced. Even breathing sometimes feels like work. They have been functioning but not living, surviving but not healing, and their heart knows it. Then comes the most painful realization of all. They were never meant to carry all of this alone, yet they tried to. They placed impossible expectations on themselves. They gave grace to everyone except their own soul. They offered comfort to others while denying their own wounds room to heal. And now, standing at the bottom of this quiet collapse, they face a crossroads. Will they keep trying to fight alone? Or will they finally let God touch the places they've been afraid to show anyone, even themselves? Their first instinct is to pull away, to gather whatever pieces remain and rebuild their walls. Pain often teaches us to hide, to protect, to withdraw. But something deeper whispers to them, a gentle stirring, a soft invitation. Let go. You are safe here. They feel their shoulders drop, their breath deepen, their defenses loosen. This collapse, as overwhelming as it is, feels strangely sacred. For the first time in a long time, they are not performing strength. They are standing in truth. Tears begin to fall freely, not the frantic tears of panic, but the slow, trembling tears of release. Tears that say, this hurts. Tears that say, I am tired. Tears that say, God, I need you. And in allowing those tears, something incredible happens. The crushing pressure inside begins to soften. They are not healed yet, far from it, but the hardness around their heart starts to crack. Just enough for light to slip in. This moment of collapse is not the end of them. It is the doorway, the breaking that makes room for healing. The silence that makes room for God's voice. the surrender that makes room for grace. And as they sit in the stillness, breathing through the ache, they understand sometimes God allows the heart to reach this point, not to destroy it, but to finally meet it fully open, fully honest, fully surrendered. Their collapse becomes the place where healing will begin. Idea 4, the prayer begins for real, opening the heart to God. When the heart finally reaches its breaking point, something unexpected happens. The walls that once stood tall begin to loosen, not because the pain has disappeared, but because the soul can no longer hold it in. And in that fragile space, where exhaustion meets surrender, the first real prayer begins to form. It doesn't begin with perfect words. It doesn't begin with eloquence. It begins with a breath shaky, trembling, honest. The character closes their eyes, and for the first time in a long time, they allow themselves to be fully present with God. The room is quiet, yet the silence feels alive, as if heaven itself is leaning closer, waiting. Their hands rest over their heart, a heart that has been bruised, stretched, wounded, and yet still beats. A whisper rises, barely audible. Lord, please heal the places in me that I've been afraid to face. This is not the kind of prayer they were taught as a child. It is not memorized. It is not shaped to sound holy. It is raw. It is vulnerable. It is the kind of prayer that is born only when the soul can no longer pretend. They continue, voice cracking as the truth pours out. I've tried to fix myself. I've tried to be strong. I've tried to carry everything alone. But I can't anymore. I need you. Saying those words feels like opening a long shut door. Behind it lie fears, disappointments, buried memories, and insecurities they never dared to show anyone. For years, they believed that God only wanted their composure, their good behavior, their gratitude, their obedience. But now, in this moment of surrender, they realize something profoundly different. God wants their truth. God wants their heart, even the broken pieces, especially the broken pieces. Tears begin to spill, warm and unrestrained. They are not tears of despair anymore. They are tears of release, the kind that come when the soul finally stops fighting itself. Tears that say, I'm tired of pretending I'm okay. Tears that whisper, please help me. They feel a gentle ache rising, and from that ache emerges another confession. Lord, I don't even know where to begin. I don't know how to heal. I don't know how to trust. Again, I don't know how to forgive, but I'm here. And I'm asking you to come into this broken place and make something new. It is the prayer of someone who has reached the end of their human strength and stepped into the beginning of divine grace. As they speak, a soft stillness settles around them, not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of presence. They are not alone. They can feel it. It's not a loud encounter, not a dramatic revelation, but a gentle companionship, as if God is sitting beside them, listening to every trembling word. Their voice steadies slightly as they continue. Show me what I've been avoiding. Hold me where I feel weakest. Heal the parts of me that I don't even understand. I give you permission to touch the wounds I've hidden from everyone, even myself. This is the turning point. The moment the heart stops running, the moment healing becomes possible, a warmth begins to stir within, subtle, delicate, almost like a soft light spreading through a room that had long been dark. They don't see visions. They don't hear booming voices, but they sense something shifting. A tenderness, a reassurance, a feeling that their sorrow is not too heavy for God, that their weakness is not a burden, that their pain is not too complicated for divine hands. For the first time in months, maybe years, they allow themselves to lean into that presence. They let their shoulders drop. They let their breath deepen. They let their heart open just a little wider. And then they say the words that seal the beginning of their healing. Lord, I place my heart in your hands. Please make it whole again. It is a prayer not of desperation, but of trust. A surrender that does not feel like defeat, but like finally being held after standing alone for too long. In that sacred moment, the character realizes that healing won't be instant. It won't erase the past, but it will begin here in honesty, in vulnerability, in surrender, in the simple, courageous act of inviting God into the very places they once tried to hide. And as the night deepens, their prayer continues no longer as a cry of despair, but as a conversation with the one who has been waiting patiently for their heart to open. Idea 5, the presence of God. When light enters the room, when the real prayer begins, something shifts not outside, but within. It is subtle at first, almost imperceptible, like the faintest breeze passing through a still room. The character does not see radiant visions or hear thunder from heaven. Instead, they notice a quiet warmth rising in their chest, a softness gently unfolding where tension once lived. It is the presence of God, not loud, not forceful, but deeply intimate. As they sit in silence, tears drying slowly on their face, they sense something different in the atmosphere. The room hasn't changed, yet everything feels changed. The darkness no longer feels empty, it feels inhabited. The air feels heavier and lighter at the same time, heavy with meaning, light with comfort. They are not alone, and somehow they know it. This presence is unlike anything they've ever felt. It is not the comfort of another human being. It is not the reassurance of someone saying, everything will be okay. It is deeper, reaching into places even words cannot reach. It feels like God is sitting beside them, not fixing anything just yet, not rushing them, not asking them to stop crying, simply being there. For the first time, they understand what Scripture meant when it said, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted." Close does not mean distant encouragement. Close means here in the same room, in the same silence, in the same fragile moment. They take a slow breath, feeling the warmth spread further. It's not a heat that burns, but one that heals, a gentleness that begins dissolving the coldness they've carried for so long. Their shoulders relax, their heartbeat steadies. A feeling of being held, not physically, but spiritually begins to rise. They whisper into the quiet, almost afraid of breaking the moment. "Lord, is that you?" And in their spirit, not through sound, but through knowing, the answer comes. "I've always been here." The realization hits them with unexpected tenderness. God wasn't waiting for eloquent prayers. God wasn't waiting for them to have everything figured out. He wasn't waiting for perfection, discipline, or theological clarity. He was waiting for openness for the moment the heart finally said, "I need you." As the presence deepens, memories begin to surface, not painfully, but gently, as if God is lifting them one by one to examine them with compassion. Faces of people who hurt them, moments that scarred them, situations that left them feeling abandoned or rejected, yet strangely, for the first time. These memories do not overwhelm, they do not drown, they simply arise and soften. It's as if God is saying, "I saw you in that moment. I was with you then. I'm with you now." The character feels something break, not a painful break, but a release. The kind that happens when a weight you've unknowingly carried begins to lift. They place a hand over their heart, amazed at the sense of peace trickling in through the cracks of their brokenness. This peace is different from anything the world offers. It's not built on certainty or solutions. It's the peace of knowing that they are not facing their pain alone. It's the peace of feeling seen, truly seen, by the one who understands every hidden corner of their inner world. The presence of God begins to fill all the empty spaces. Where there was fear, there is now calm. Where there was despair, there is now a gentle hope. Where there was loneliness, there is companionship. This presence does not erase the pain instantly, but it changes the nature of it. Pain held alone feels unbearable. Pain held in the arms of God feels survivable, even meaningful. They whisper another trembling prayer. "Stay with me. Lord, I don't want to face this alone anymore." And deep inside, they sense God respond, not in words, but in a steadying assurance. "I'm not going anywhere." They sit there for a long while, wrapped in a silence that feels sacred. It is the kind of silence that transforms, the kind that restores breath to weary lungs and softness to a hardened heart. Healing hasn't fully happened yet, but its beginnings are unmistakable. The light has entered the room, and once God's light enters, the darkness cannot stay the same. Idea 6, the lessons God teaches in the healing. As the presence of God settles gently over the wounded heart, something begins to shift inside the character, not just emotionally. But spiritually, healing is not only comfort, it is revelation. When God draws close, He does not simply ease the pain, He also illuminates the truth hidden beneath it. And through that illumination, He begins to teach lessons that the soul could not have learned any other way. The first lesson comes quietly. like a whisper rising from deep within. No pain in your life has been meaningless. Every tear, every disappointment, every heartbreak, none of it was wasted. For years, the character believed their suffering was random, unfair, or proof that they were weak. But now, in God's presence, they begin to see how each wound carved out space for a deeper compassion, a softer heart, a wiser spirit. Pain did not destroy them, it shaped them. And God, who sees beyond every moment, is now weaving that pain into purpose. The second lesson follows gently, almost like an embrace. You were never alone, even when you felt abandoned. There were nights when the silence was so loud it felt like God had left them. Days when prayers seemed unanswered, and their heart wondered if heaven had turned away. But in this sacred moment, they feel the truth settle into their bones. God was there in every breath, every trembling step, every lonely tear that fell onto their pillow. His silence was not absence. It was protection, preparation, and presence in a form they couldn't yet perceive. Then another realization rises, deeper and more challenging. Healing requires surrender, not control. The character spent years trying to fix themselves, tightening their grip, forcing themselves to be strong, pretending they were healed long before they truly were. But God gently shows them that healing is not achieved by striving. It grows through surrender. True restoration begins the moment they stop fighting their pain and place it in His hands. What they tried to repair through willpower, God begins to restore through grace. A fourth lesson surfaces, one that stirs both fear and freedom. Forgiveness is not letting someone off the hook. It is letting yourself out of the prison. There are wounds inflicted by others, words that stung, betrayals that left scars. The character held on to them tightly, believing that releasing the offense would excuse the wrongdoing, but in God's presence, they begin to see forgiveness differently. It is not erasing what happened, nor pretending it didn't matter. It is choosing not to let that pain define the rest of their life. It is opening the door to their own soul and saying, you are free to move forward now. Another lesson rises soft but firm, like a gentle correction. Your worth never depended on those who hurt you. For so long, the character believed that rejection meant they were unlovable, that abandonment meant they were unworthy, that heartbreak meant they had failed. But God shows them a truth that cuts through every lie. Their value was never determined by human hands. They were loved before the world formed, chosen before pain touched them, held even in their darkest hour. No person has ever had the authority to define their worth. Only God does. The final lesson emerges slowly, like dawn breaking. Healing is a journey, not a moment, and God walks every step with you. They realize that healing will not happen overnight. It will come in layers, through revelations, through moments of release, through days of peace and nights of vulnerability. But they no longer fear the process, because now they know the healer walks beside them, shaping them, strengthening them, guiding them gently into who they were always meant to become. In these divine lessons, the character discovers something profound. Their pain was the doorway to their transformation. Their surrender was the beginning of their freedom, and God's presence quiet, steady, unwavering, is what will ultimately restore their heart. The healing has begun, not because the wounds vanished, but because the truth has entered, and where God's truth resides, nothing broken stays the same. Idea 7, the healing process, from the inside out. Healing does not arrive like a sudden sunrise. It unfolds slowly, tenderly, and often quietly, the way morning light seeps gently through a curtain. After the character encounters God's presence and the first lessons begin to settle in their heart, the real transformation begins. Not outwardly, not in dramatic life changes, but deep within the hidden chambers of the soul. The first sign of healing is subtle. Their heart begins to breathe again. They wake up one morning and notice that the tightness in their chest has softened just a little. The sorrow is still there, but it no longer feels suffocating. Instead of being swallowed by despair, they feel a faint spark of hope pulsing inside them, small but alive. This is how God often heals. Not by erasing the darkness all at once, but by igniting light within it. Over the next days, they start recognizing patterns that once controlled them. They notice the lies they believed. I'm not enough. I'll never recover. I'm too broken to heal. These thoughts once felt like truths, but now, with God's presence lingering in their soul, they begin to see them for what they really are. Wounds, speaking loudly, and as truth replaces lies, something inside them begins to straighten. like a tree growing toward sunlight after years of bending toward the ground. Then comes another stage. The heart slowly regains its voice. For so long, they silenced their own emotions, believing tears made them weak. But now, within the safety of God's grace, they allow themselves to feel again, not to drown, but to heal. They begin journaling, praying, letting emotions rise without judgment. They cry sometimes, but these tears cleanse rather than break. They feel anger at old wounds, but this anger becomes a doorway to clarity, not destruction. The emotions they once feared now become instruments of restoration. As healing deepens, they begin to see themselves differently. They look in the mirror and no longer see someone defined by pain. They see a survivor, someone who has walked through fire and still stands. Someone who has been shattered but is slowly being remade. They begin to speak to themselves with kindness instead of criticism, offering compassion to their own heart the way God has offered compassion to them. This internal shift then starts affecting the outer world. Conversations that once triggered them no longer hold the same power. The opinions of others, which once pierced deeply, begin to lose their sting. They stop over-explaining themselves. They stop shrinking to make others comfortable. They say no when their soul needs boundaries, and they say it calmly, without guilt. Healing from within begins shaping their behavior in ways they didn't expect. And then, almost without noticing when it happened, they begin rediscovering joy, not the loud, ecstatic kind, but the quiet joy found in small things, a warm sunrise, a gentle laugh, a peaceful moment with a cup of tea. These glimmers of joy are like God's fingerprints, subtle reminders that life is not just pain, it is also goodness, renewal, and beauty waiting to be noticed again. With time, their relationships also shift. Instead of chasing love or validation, they begin building connections rooted in truth. They no longer cling out of fear of being alone. They no longer accept crumbs of affection. A healed heart sees clearly, chooses wisely, and loves without losing itself. What once felt like a desperate need for others becomes a sacred desire for authenticity. And the greatest transformation of all happens spiritually. They start to trust God more deeply, not because everything is perfect, but because they've experienced what it feels like to be held by Him in imperfection. Their prayers grow softer, more honest, less frantic. They understand that healing is not a race, but a companionship, a sacred unfolding between their soul and God's love. Eventually, they look back and realize they are not the same person who collapsed in the dark. They are steadier, softer, clearer, more whole. Healing has not removed the scar, but it has transformed what the scar means. It is no longer a mark of what broke them. It is a mark of what God restored. From the inside out, a new life has begun. Idea 8, the moment of complete healing, when the heart becomes whole again, to 700 words. Healing rarely announces its arrival. It comes quietly, often unnoticed, until one day the soul wakes up and realizes that the weight once chained to its chest is no longer there. For the character, this moment does not appear with dramatic signs or sudden miracles. It appears gently, like dawn breaking after a long night. Soft but undeniable. It begins with an ordinary morning. They wake up expecting the usual heaviness, the familiar ache, the tightness that has lived in their chest for months, but instead they feel something strange. Lightness, a stillness that doesn't come from exhaustion but from peace. It takes them a few breaths to understand what is happening. Something inside has settled. Something inside has been restored. As they sit on the edge of their bed, sunlight slipping across the floor, they realize that the wounds which once defined them no longer feel raw. They are still there, but they no longer sting. They no longer dictate their thoughts. They no longer shape their identity. What once consumed them has now become a quiet memory, honored but no longer painful. And then the truth arrives like a warm whisper in their spirit. You made it. You are healed. The character closes their eyes, and instead of tears of sorrow, tears of gratitude begin to gather. The journey was long, filled with prayers whispered through trembling lips, nights of surrender, days of choosing hope even when hope felt impossible. But now, in this still moment, they feel the completion of something sacred. Healing has woven itself into their bones. They notice changes they did not see happening. The burden of fear is gone. The need for validation has loosened. The echo of past voices no longer controls them. They no longer wake up dreading the day. Instead, they feel anchored, rooted, steady. There is a new strength rising inside them, not the brittle strength of self-defense, but the gentle resilience that comes from knowing they are held by God. Their heart feels whole, not flawless, not untouched, but whole in the way something becomes whole after being broken and lovingly repaired. Every crack has been filled with grace. Every fracture has become a place where God poured light. They begin to reflect on the past, but now with clarity instead of pain. They see where God carried them. They see where God waited patiently. They see where God transformed what was meant to destroy them into something that shaped them. And then another realization washes over them like a tide. They have forgiven, truly forgiven, not because the other person deserved it, but because their own heart deserved freedom. The bitterness has dissolved. The anger has lost its fire. The wound that once reopened with every memory has sealed. They can think of the past without collapsing under its weight. Forgiveness, they now understand, was not a single act but a gradual loosening, and now the final knot has come undone. Next, they sense something even deeper. They have forgiven themselves for staying too long, for trusting the wrong people, for not knowing better at the time, for breaking under the pressure of pain. Self-forgiveness wraps around them like a warm cloak. They no longer judge the version of themselves who was lost, afraid, or hurting. They hold that version with compassion now, knowing that God held them even when they couldn't hold themselves. Then comes the most profound shift of all. They feel love again, not fragile love, not desperate love, not love rooted in fear of abandonment, but love that springs from a healed heart, whole, secure, and grounded in God's presence. They realize they no longer search outward for completion. They are already complete in Him. Any love that comes now will be an addition, not a patch for emptiness. In this moment, they smile, a genuine smile that reaches the eyes, the kind they haven't felt in a long time. It is the smile of someone who has walked through darkness but found the light waiting on the other side. They whisper softly, "Thank you, Lord, for making me whole again." It is not the end of their story. It is the beginning of a new chapter, one marked by peace, purpose, and a heart fully alive. The wound that once threatened to break them has become the very place God's healing shines the brightest. And now, with a restored heart and steady breath, they step forward into a future no longer shaped by pain, but by promise. Idea 9, the closing. A prayer for a new day. Morning comes gently, not as an interruption, but as an invitation. The character stands near the window, watching light spill quietly across the earth. For the first time in a very long time, they feel ready not only to face the day, but to step into it with a healed and open heart. The pain that once defined their mornings has loosened its grip, replaced now with something softer, something sacred. Peace. In this stillness, they close their eyes and breathe deeply. A prayer begins to rise, not forced, not rehearsed, but born naturally from a renewed spirit. Lord, thank you for bringing me through the night and into a new day. This simple gratitude carries the weight of everything they've walked through. God saw them collapse. God sat with them in silence. God worked gently in the hidden places. And now, God has brought them to the other side of their storm. Their heart knows this, and so the prayer continues. Thank you for healing the wounds I thought would never close. They feel warmth swell in their chest as they reflect on how far they've come. Healing wasn't instant. It wasn't easy, but God was faithful, steady, patient. Every moment of surrender became a step toward restoration. Then the prayer shifts, becoming a request not of desperation, but of trust. Walk with me today, Lord. Guide my thoughts, steady my steps, and let my heart remain soft and open. They want to carry their healing into the world, not protect it with fear, but share it through kindness, clarity, and wisdom. The person who once trembled under the weight of brokenness now stands with quiet courage. They understand that God's presence is not only for moments of collapse, but for every breath that follows. Another thought rises. Help me love without fear, give without losing myself, and forgive quickly when I am hurt. These words are not naive. They come from someone who has learned the cost of loving with an unhealed heart, someone who has seen what happens when wounds dictate choices. Now, with God restoring them from within, they long to live differently, grounded, discerning, compassionate, but also protected by divine wisdom. As sunlight warms their skin, the final part of the prayer forms, use my healed heart. Lord, let my story become a source of hope for someone still walking through their darkness. Let the peace you gave me overflow into the lives around me. This is the transformation from wounded to restored, from broken to whole, from survival to purpose. They are no longer praying for the strength to make it through the day. They are praying to become a vessel of light in it. They open their eyes. The world outside hasn't changed, but they have, with a renewed spirit and a steady breath. They whisper one last line, thank you. Lord, today I walk forward with you. And just like that, a new chapter begins, not shaped by pain, but guided by grace.